Greetings nerdy list aficionados, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. We're talking about powers and holding them back. Some obvious people were not in part 1. We held them back. We held back our powers, so some will be here in part 2. We're gonna look at a couple of types of holding back. Having to hold back, wanting to, and just not thinking about it. Cause in a way, don't we all hold back? Well, sorta. So we're gonna give you credible reasons why. Get excited. I'm Sasha, and these are the top 10 superheroes that hold back their superpowers part 2. Number 10. Booster Gold. Firstly, Booster's powers are tech-based, yes, but they still count. Michael Carter, aka Booster Gold, first appeared in Booster Gold number 1 back in 1986, and has changed a lot since his first appearance, though in adaptation form he is often stuck in that mode that he first appeared in. Booster is just an average person in the 25th century living in Gotham, down on his luck after he had been caught throwing football games. He ended up in disgrace and was working in a museum as a night watchman, and with the help of the security robot Skeets, he stole a bunch of tech and combined it to create his costume and went back in time pretending to be a hero from the future. At first he was really only interested in the fame and the merchandising. So much merchandising. But over time he transitioned into a real hero, and is sometimes quite crippled by the weight of the power he holds, particularly time travel. Booster can go and change pretty much anything, but there will be ramifications. Possibly one of the saddest time travel Booster stories is when he went back in time to save his best friend, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, from being killed by Maxwell Lord. However, this messed up the timeline, but he was willing to live with it, just so that he could have his friend back. But when the Blue Beetle found out, he couldn't let him be so selfish and voluntarily went back to take his place in the timeline. Booster has to keep his selfish nature in check when it comes to time travel, and for the most part he does. Uses it pretty responsibly, but it weighs on him. Holding back can be a burden, but it's part of what makes one a true hero. Number 9. Black Bolt. Time to get real obvious. Black Bolt first debuted in Fantastic Four number 45 back in 1965, and is a core member of the Inhumans, royalty. He can't speak. I mean, he can, but he shouldn't. His speech center in his brain is different. It produces an unknown particle that interacts with the electrons in his brain, which has caused him to have the most devastating sonic scream out there. Just whispering, he could destroy pretty much anything and anyone. Now, Black Bolt can control and channel his powers a bit with the help of his costume. That top part is a tuning fork, it's not just decoration. But he's hyper aware of this, and so is always very careful. Still, you learn a lot when you can't speak. Black Bolt knows things. And he's a secret weapon when you really need someone stopped. You can convince him to speak, and he only needs to say one thing, and that's it. Number 8. The Scarlet Witch. So her powers have been tweaked and retweaked over time. They're trying to get away from the all-consuming reality warping powers that gave the world House of M and the whole no more mutants thing. But for a time, and she still kinda does, have to be hyper aware of her powers, cause she had a history of triggering them subconsciously based on her own desires, like the saga of her and Vision's children, which has been rendered more complicated in the modern era. Wanda Maximoff first debuted in the X-Men number 4 back in 1964 and has changed a lot since then. Her powers are now in the chaos magic realm with a mutant element on top, so there's more control, which is good, cause the ability to change whatever one wants, that's a lot of a lot. It would and does drive most who hold it mad. Too much power, too much, beyond Omega. Number 7. Cable. Here we're getting into the has to hold back category, or rather had to hold back. He first appeared as Cable in the New Mutants number 87 back in 1990. He had been introduced as Nathan Summers in 1986. Back then he was just a baby and not a man out of time. Cable has very powerful telekinetic powers, but initially he had to use them to keep the techno-organic virus he was suffering from spreading to the rest of his body. That used to be the source of his cool metal arm. When he doesn't have to hold back, Cable is a force to be reckoned with. It's that dangerous combination of telepathy and telekinesis, along with that sense of self-righteousness he inherited from his father, Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Cable has built his own utopian floating city. That was during the Deadpool and Cable team-up. Good times. Cable is one who has fluctuating powers. He has them all. Oh no, they're gone. Oh yay, some of them are back. It just depends which area you're in. Number 6. Liz Sherman. Liz Sherman was first seen in Hellboy Seed of Destruction back in 1994, and is a being of immense power that she does not want and struggles to control. Her holding back is that quest for control and a fear of what happens when she loses it. Liz has pyrokinesis, the fire starting ability, and oh, what a fire it is. Her powers manifested when she was 10 years old, and because of her strict religious upbringing, she thought they were a punishment from God for her sins. This has caused her to form a very complex relationship with them. It also didn't help that at age 11 she lost control and killed her whole family. To learn to control her powers, she had to learn emotional control, as that is what triggers them. She has to hold back her emotions and keep them on an even keel, all while wrestling with the bitterness her powers have left her with. Not fun. Number 5. The Flash. Any of them, doesn't really matter which. They're always holding back. Their natural speed is now fast. It's not the normal speed that the rest of us are moving at. They're just constantly moving through molasses to make us feel comfortable. Cause if not, it'd be like the Reverse Flash, how he just lets himself vibrate, which is terrifying. Just slightly out of phase. Always kind of crackling, red eyes. But the Flashes don't do that because they're nice people. Still, there is a sadness to it, and it makes their good cheer more impressive. To always be being a bit out of step, having to be patient always as the people around you move as fast as they can, but it'll never be fast enough for you. It could leave you feeling disconnected. And again, the time travel possibilities of not holding back. Barry Allen created the New 52 reboot because of his meddling, even though the Doomsday crossover was trying to make that Dr. Manhattan's fault, but it took too long to come out. Art delays. We're only on issue 10. It's been years. Number 4. The Spectre. The Spectre first debuted in More Fun Comics number 52 back in 1940. Cliff notes. The Spectre is the spirit of vengeance who carries out his missions through human hosts. The first was Jim Corrigan, a police officer who made the mistake of getting engaged in a fictional story, so he was murdered. The last part was the Golden Age. He became an avenging spirit in the Silver Age, and he can be very harsh. He has godlike powers and can, wait for it, manipulate time and space, control all matter, has invulnerability, and limitless strength. So how is he holding back? Well, he's really held back by the morality of his hosts. The Spectre exists in a kind of dual host-like existence. The host is there, they're not fully subsumed, and they can resist some of the Spectre's more cruel impulses.
You can't kill a dead man.
The guilty must be punished for their crimes.
If they want to. Some hosts just go with it. Corrigan is notable for this. Hal Jordan was also a host for the Spectre, and he always fought him. This was after Hal died redeeming himself by blowing up the sun. He was then the Spectre until he was resurrected. Also, he would still go on dates with Carol as the Spectre. It was kind of awful. She could never move on with her life until she did, and then he came back to life. Poor Carol. Actually, no, she's awful to Hal. One day I'll tell you the full story of how she once got mad at Hal because he blew her off to save a dying planet. I mean, what's more important? Ferris Air being attacked or a planet breaking apart like Krypton? Number 3. Gambit. Gambit is a lot more powerful than people think. He first debuted in Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14 back in 1990. His powers work by converting the potential energy stored in an inanimate object into pure light kinetic energy, and he has a lot of potential to harness energy also. He also has hypnotic charm. In an alternate storyline, when his full potential was reached, he became New Sun. In this state, he could control all aspects of kinetic energy down to the molecular level, so he can manipulate the potency of energy, which yes, was as terrifying as it sounds. He could then simulate pretty much any type of energy, and of course time travel and cross dimensions in space, and just remake things to his will by turning into pure energy and joining the kinetic flow. Thankfully, the Gambit this happened to was an alternate reality one. Main vs. Gambit actually went up against this counterpart and was left less powerful as a result. Also, Gambit can now convert inert materials into toxic substances. It's a good thing Gambit just likes throwing his playing cards, because he could kill us all. Powers on top of powers, with X-Men, sometimes too much. Blame Grant Morrison and secondary mutations, and also the ever-sliding power scale. Number 2. Reed Richards. This is a case of a couple of things. Sometimes he forgets about his abilities because he defeats his enemies more with his intellect and inventions. Another way he's holding back is that he can be a lot more devilish than he is in terms of proactively destroying threats, but the only thing holding him back is what Sue would think. We've seen this a few times. There was a what-if story. What if Sue Storm died in childbirth, and after she dies, Reed just goes off the deep end, murdering their villains, claiming she was the only thing stopping him, but with her gone, what's the point? The sketchy things he does, he also does behind her back. The Council of Reeds, when he joined that League of Alternate Universe Reeds, most of which had gauntlets. The whole Illuminati thing. So his family and love, but specifically Sue, is all that's keeping Reed in check. She can't leave him for Namor, and Namor's been trying hard. He even told Reed he was trying, but that she wouldn't leave. The modern Fantastic Four run is trying to pretend Sue and Namor aren't a thing, for some reason. But I'll never forget. Bearded nice guy Reed? We'll see how long that lasts. Number 1. Superman. Hey, obvious, but he deserves it. The Man of Steel is always holding back. The launcher of the golden age of both heroes and comics has seen his powers grow a lot since his creation in 1938. His strength and potential are held in check by his inherent goodness and belief in humanity. When he uses his full potential, we usually end up with a dark Superman. Somebody mentioned it in the comments of part 1 and I was going to mention it anyway, but one of the best examples of this is from the finale of the Justice League Unlimited when Superman fights Darkseid and gives his famous "I feel like I live in a world of cardboard" speech.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
Superman has been holding back since he was a child. At this point, it's a habit, second nature, and thank goodness for that. The world couldn't handle a Superman always using his full power set, no matter how much kryptonite Batman has. Side note, does anyone else remember that story where Bruce helped Clark find and destroy all the kryptonite in the world? I was like, aw, sweet, and also like, that would never happen simultaneously. So those were 10 more heroes who hold back their powers. Are we missing any? I'm sure you'll let us know down below. Please, while you're down there, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more nerdy videos. We'll see you again soon here on Top 10 Nerd. Bye bye.